Thank you for joining us for another episode of Lackawanna Pastimes. We're continuing our theme for the upcoming America 250th celebrations in July, looking back at early history. Today we're joined by Michelle Dembesky of the DAR and the Colonial Dames, who will be talking about the Native American history in the Wyoming Valley. So we're looking at some of our earliest colonial history in the region. Michelle, I'll turn the program over to you.
Thank you, Sarah. To give you a little background of my interest in the Native Americans, my mother grew up on a farm in Newton Ransom, Milwaukee area, and behind her farm was Bald Mountain, and she used to find arrowheads on the property all the time. So this is going way, way back with the family, with the Native Americans. While I was in college, I went to East Stroudsburg State College, and all of our dorms were named after the Native Americans. I am also in Colonial Dames prior to the 1700s. My family owned Blackwell Island off of New York City that was once owned by the Native Americans and is now Roosevelt Island. And I am the Native American Indian chairman of the Daughters of the American Revolution of Scranton. So we will go to our first slide. Since the mid-1980s, the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution has supported efforts to identify the names of Native Americans and individuals of mixed heritage who supported the American struggle for independence from Great Britain. Next. Next slide. At the outbreak of the Revolutionary War, Native Americans in the East, South, and along the frontier once again had to weigh their options to protect their homes and have access to trade and supplies. Some chose the loyalist side, some the patriotic cause, while others tried to remain neutral. Often tribes were split. Most people living in the United States are familiar with the term Native American, American Indian, and increasingly indigenous American or indigenous people. While the U.S. government continues to use the term American Indian officially, many find Indian a painful reminder of the racism, violence, theft, and decimation of their people. There's a reason why many states and regions now officially recognize and celebrate indigenous peoples. Indigenous people object to the term Native Americans because it was a name assigned by the white oppressor, and it categorizes them as Americans, a name they did not choose. Next. William Penn made a treaty with the Indians at Shackamazon near Kensington and Philadelphia. Under an elm tree, Penn chose to acquire land for his colony through business rather than conquest. He paid the Indians 1,200 pounds for their land under the treaty, an amount considered fair. Next. In the early years of the United States, Indian affairs were governed by the Continental Congress, which in 1775 created a committee on Indian affairs headed by Benjamin Franklin. A historical marker is at the intersection of Providence Road and Diamond Avenue on the right, near the Capoose historical marker. Now, he is pronounced Capoose, and we say Capouse Street in Scranton, so it got lost in translation. Was a nearby flat where a Native American village was located. Under Chief Capoose was located, they had cabins for winter and wigwams for summer. Rich silt soil from the river made fertile soil for their gardens of corn, onions, cantaloupe, and beans. In the Lackawanna River with hooks, they can fish for perk, pike, shad, and trout. In the woods with stone-tipped spears, they hunted for pheasants, ducks, turkeys, rabbits, moose, elk, beaver, and muskrat. The skins were used for clothing. The Six Nations were the Mohawks, the Oneidas, the Onondagas, the Cayugas, the Senecas, and Tuscaroras, with them having subdivisions. They were all very democratic, and most of them in the region were the Lenape tribe. When Chief Capoose died, signal fires were sent from the top of Bald Mountain in Milwaukee and answered from Campbell Ledge in Mountaintop. He was known to get along with the white settlers. So my grandparents and great-grandparents had farms at the base of Bald Mountain. So this was the lookout point from Wilkes-Barre to Binghamton. Next. The native presence in the region has been mostly neglected aside from key places named after the Lenape, such as Lackawanna River, stream that forks, and Naog, noisy water or roaring brook. Next. The Battle of Wyoming Valley, the massacre, was July 3rd, 1778. It was an encounter between American patriots and loyalists accompanied by Iroquois raiders that took place in the Wyoming Valley of Pennsylvania. Iroquois leaders planned an attack on the Wyoming settlers to reclaim Native American land and disrupt the grain production that supplied the Patriot war effort. After the battlers, settlers claimed that the Iroquois raiders had hunted and killed fleeing patriots before using ritual torture against 30 to 40 who had surrendered until they died. American casualties were estimated to be 360 killed and 5 to 20 captured. British casualties were estimated to be 3 killed, 8 wounded. One of the British commanders, Colonel Zebulon Butler, claimed that his force took 227 scalps, burned 1,000 houses, and drove off 1,000 cattle, plus many sheep and hogs. The Iroquois were paid in gold and rum. Next. During the Pennonite Wars, a series of conflicts in which settlers from Connecticut, the Yankees, and Pennsylvania Pennamites disrupted for control of the Wyoming Valley along the north branch of the Susquehanna River. Isaac Tripp was a very prominent man. He was a Quaker and settled with 40 settlers in the Wyoming Valley in 1769. He did not believe in fighting, and the Native Americans knew him and respected him. But on July 3rd, 1778, Grandpa Isaac and his son-in-law Jonathan Slocum and son William were away from the fort feeding hay to the cattle. Several Native Americans waited in ambush and killed Isaac and Jonathan December 16th, 1778. Isaac was downed by 9 spears, and the British paid $20 for his scalp, twice the going rate. Son William ran and was shot in the foot. Next. Francis Slocum. On November 2nd, 1778, a group of Delaware Americans entered the home of Mr. and Mrs. Jonathan Slocum in present-day Wilkes-Barre. They carried off one of their 10 children, barely 5 at the time. Frances was called Mohangwakwa, or Young Bear, by their captors. Because of her protests, she had 2 Native American marriages and 4 children. She lived in Niagara Falls, Detroit, and Peoria. In 1838, Isaac Slocum discovered his long-lost sister may be the white woman who lives among the Indians, as told by a Native American trader. When Isaac encountered the woman, he knew it was her because she had lost the end of her left forefinger in her childhood. Through an interpreter, Isaac tried to convince her to return to Pennsylvania. She explained, "They have always used me very kindly. I am used to them. The Great White Spirit has always allowed me to live with them, and I wish to live and die with them." Next. In 1778, the Native Americans were paid in gold coin by their British for participating in the Wyoming Massacre. General Sullivan, a colonist, pursued the Native Americans from Easton, Wyoming, Tunkhannock, Wyalusing, Fort Sullivan, and on to Upper New York State. The Native Americans were dispersed and cruelly punished. In 1849, William Davies heard about a story that the Native Americans who participated in the Wyoming Massacre fled to Hungry Hill and Dunmore, and then traveled a half day and 2 streams to 40-foot falls, meaning White Oak Creek in Archbold. Not far from the stream was a cave where the gold was hidden. He returned in 1852 and began searching for the gold in secret. Soon the secret was out, and people came from Scranton, Carbondale, Pittston, and even as far as Oliphant, and came searching for the gold, and nothing was found. This was listed in a newspaper article that I'd found at the Albright Library. Next slide. The Delaware Indian originally called themselves Lenape people, which means something like the people. However, they were given the name Delaware because they lived along the Delaware River. And the river in turn was named after the governor of Jamestown Colony, Lord de la Ware. And he was also instrumental in helping with the boundaries of the Pennsylvania land. So that's how we got the word Delaware. Next. Colonists introduced coal to the Native Americans. Next. Pennsylvania Native Americans traveled more by land than water. The rivers contain many rapids and many places are dangerous to descend and ascend. Their dugouts were heavy and clumsy. The lighter canoe was better, but birch did not grow abundant in Pennsylvania. They chose directions that were dry, level, and direct. The colonists adapted this same thinking, and their roads were much more winding and long. And a good majority of our roads in the area were all the original Indian trails. Next. At the Everhart Museum, not currently on display, is a Native American canoe. The canoe was found weighed down by rocks at the bottom of Curtis Pond, South Canaan Township. During the winter months, they would line their canoes with rocks to sink it to the bottom away from the ice. It was made of eastern hemlock and was 18 feet long by 22 wide and 16 deep. It was designed to hold 4 to 5 individuals, depending on the size of the people. Each canoe differed in design based on local customs. As of 2017, this was one of the 20 canoes found at the bottom of Pennsylvania lakes. Next. And that's the canoe up at the Anthracite Museum. And next, some of the tools and Indian spearheads that they used. And next, dream catchers. The iconic hoop and web form is meant to protect the sleeper from bad dreams by catching them, while letting the good dreams pass through, and they are placed in the window. Next, we go to Wyalusing, and this was for another program I did. Wyalusing means home of the warrior in the Lenape language, spoken by the Munsee Delaware tribes who settled in this area of Pennsylvania. They settled here after being displaced by the colonists. In 1752, Chief Paupenhank, along with 20 families, built the village of Wyalusing. Wyalusing, PA, is 1 hour and 9 minutes from Scranton. It is situated where Wyalusing Creek enters the Susquehanna River and is built upon a low hill nestled between the Browntown Mountain and the renowned Wyalusing Rocks. It was a great transportation area used by all of the Native Americans and later the settlers. Next. And these are Lenape tribe. Next. The Lenape lived in wigwams or long houses, and not the teepees often associated with the American Indians of the Great Plains. To make a wigwam, a frame was made by bending saplings into a dome-like shape. The dome was then covered with sheets of bark, evergreen branches, and animal skins. Next. And the word teepee originates from the Lakota language and the word thipi, which is often translated to mean they dwell. Today you may see it spelled T-I-P-I, teepee, but each referring to the same type of structure. Next. And here is the traditional teepee. The Wyalusing rocks are known as prayer rocks. They beckon visitors with a stunning overlook and rich history spanning centuries. Esteemed in Native American cultures, this elevated site served as an important point for communication above a bend in the Susquehanna River, enabling signals to be seen for miles. It marked the convergence of the Warrior Path connecting northward to Binghamton and southward to the Carolinas, and the Wyalusing Path leading to Shamokin. The historic site stands as a testament to its significance across various periods of North American history. Next, Queen Esther was of the French and Native American heritage. She married a Delaware Indian chief. She had an influential position in the tribe. She was the leader of Queen Esther's town, situated in the Wyalusing area. It consisted of 70 houses in the mid-1700s. And today there is a residential housing area in Sayre called Queen Esther's Estates. Next. Sullivan's March. In the spring of 1779, George Washington was faced with a dilemma. The Continental Army kept watch over the British troops, but the Native Americans and the Tories were a threat to the rear. The Six Nations of the Native Americans were under siege by General John Sullivan and other officers of the Continental Army. Then Corporal Daniel Broadhead was asked to bring the troops from Fort Pitt to aid in the battles. Queen Esther's bloody revenge. Queen Esther's son died in a violent argument between him and a drunken townsman. Queen Esther ordered a raid of a nearby farm. The Iroquois tortured and killed 30 to 40 American troops. This occurred on July 3rd, 1778, and was known as the Wyoming Massacre and the Bloody Rock. The attack was ordered by Queen Esther, later known as the Butcher of Wyoming. There was a plaque placed there by the Daughters of the American Revolution Wyoming chapter in 1895. And we attend a ceremony there on the 4th of July every year from the Daughters of the American Revolution. Next. On the night of July 3rd, 1778, after the Battle of Wyoming, 14 or more captive American soldiers were murdered here by a maul wielded by revengeful Indian woman, traditionally but not certainly identified as Queen Esther. Next. And then this is another plaque for that was put in the area there. That's kind of hard to read. There are some conflicting stories about exactly different accounts, but this is the accounts that I've found. Next. Colonel Thomas Hartley and his troops confronted the Iroquois as they were held back and retreated. Queen Esther and the women and the children tried to escape. They were captured and executed. Queen Esther was hung and dismembered and thrown into the pond with the murder villages. And the DAR marked a plaque to commemorate that for Thomas Hartley. General John Sullivan left the Wilkes-Barre area and traveled north on August 8, 1779. He camped in Wyalusing, PA. Sergeant Martin Johnson of New Jersey and a body from General Philip Van Cortlandt's regiment were buried in Wyalusing. The exact location of the burial is not known, and there is a marker there on the rock that was placed in 1914 by the Daughters of the American Revolution of the Wyalusing chapter. Fort Sullivan, there is a plaque placed on a rock commemorating the efforts of General John Sullivan's troop in the fort in his name. A marker was placed on a large rock in 1914 by the Tioga chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution. And then this is the plaque. And we have a Fort Sullivan, Pennsylvania one. And just as a little side note, my neighbor is down in Harrisburg working now recently, and his job is to put all of these blue plaques on a website. So as if you're passing one of them and you passed too fast and you don't know what the plaque is, you're going to be able to look it up and find out what these plaques all mean. Next. The French Asylum, also in the Wyalusing area, is the French Asylum. It was a planned settlement built in 1793 for the French aristocrats and Marie Antoinette. They were fleeing France during the French Revolution. The Iroquois originally inhabited this area and called it Misicum or the Meadows. And there is a Marie Antoinette lookout point on the next slide. And next we have a map of the area so you can see which area, like we were basically the Lenape tribe. Okay, and next we're going to move into the Poconos. The Lenni Lenape were the original people living in the Pocono Mountains region long before the European settlers arrived. The name Lenape translates to the original people in their language, reflecting their deep connections to the land. The word Pocono is derived from the Lenape word Pocowacho, meaning creek between two mountains. Next slide. William Penn's treaties. William Penn signed several treaties with the Lenape, following mutual respect and striving for peaceful existence. The treaties were symbolized by natural elements like creeks, rivers, celestial bodies representing enduring peace. William Penn was honored with the name Miquon, meaning quill, reflecting his dedication to peace and understanding. Chief Tammany and Peace. Chief was a respected Native American leader, well known for his wisdom and leadership among Lenape people. The friendship between Chief Tammany and William Penn symbolizes peace and mutual respect between the Native Americans and European settlers. A statue of Chief Tammany stands in Philadelphia, honoring his legacy and promoting cultural understanding and respect. Indian Head Rock. This is found in the Delaware Water Gap, an area renowned for its secret beauty and geological formations. The rock is an outcropping of gunk quartzite, a naturally formed stony profile on Mount Tammany, New Jersey. Local legends tell of the tribesmen carrying carving the face into the stone to commemorate Chief Tammany, adding cultural and historical significance. And the next one is kind of a strange side view of the rock. As you know, you go from outside of East Stroudsburg through the Delaware Water Gap to New Jersey. This is something that is just a landmark. There's a lot of hiking there for everybody. And it connects people to the local history, indigenous heritage. And next, we have forts in the Poconos. In 1755 to 1756, Benjamin Franklin was tasked with establishing forts in the Pocono area for the settlers to move in. Along with James Hamilton, he established Fort Hamilton in Stroudsburg on the Main and Monroe Streets. The establishment of these forts was crucial for the protection of the settlers and development of the region. Another fort is Fort Hamilton, and this was built in 1755 during the French and Indian War, serving as a key military post in Stroudsburg. The fort was constructed to protect settlers from the attacks and played a crucial role in the region's defense strategy. Today, Fort Hamilton stands as a historic site reflecting rich colonial history of the area. The revered eagle. The eagle in Native American culture symbolizes strength, courage, wisdom, and freedom, embodying the values of the community. Eagles are often messengers to the Creator, connecting the spiritual and human realms in Native American traditions. Eagle feathers are sacred and used in ceremonies representing honesty, truth, and power, playing a vital role in spiritual rituals. Native American totems. Totem poles showcase family crests, clan memberships, and lineage, visually representing family ties and ancestry. These poles serve as a visual representation of cultural history and storytelling, conveying important traditions and narratives. I watch a show called The Last Woodsman, and it's about lumber excavators. And he leased land from the Native Americans, and they asked for a very long, certain kind of a tree because they were going to make a new totem. So there's still the Native Americans practicing this today. Native American astrology, the medicine wheel is a central element in the Native American astrology, representing the cycle of life in connection to nature. There's totem animals linked to each of the 12 moons, representing different traits and energies within the Native American astrology. Totem animals are categorized according to the compass directions and seasons. Arrowheads and ancient points. And you could see they're dating back to the Stone Age, where they were crafted for hunting and warfare. Arrowheads were essential tools in ancient times, utilized both in hunting, food, and in warfare. Collecting artifacts on public lands is illegal and unethical, as it disrupts archaeological sites and preserves historical context. So even if I went up on my mother's old property and found arrowheads, we are not supposed to take them. And I know they tell you down at Gettysburg, do not pick up anything you find down there. Next slide. The Pocono Indian Museum in the Strasburg area. It displays the artifacts used by the Delaware Indians, providing insight into their daily lives and traditions. And you can see all the tools and weapons and where they were colonized with maps. And you can actually look this up on Google, and you can take a visual tour of the map. Some of the Native American names that we have, that's our last slide, Sarah. Some of the Native American names that we have from our area, Lackawanna, forks of the river. Capoose had no determined meaning. Lehigh, where there are forks and streams entering the Delaware at Easton. Lycoming, sandy stream. Manuka, good land. Moosic, elk place. Nanacoke, tidewater people. Pocono, stream between the mountains. Shamokin, place of chiefs and rulers, site of Delaware Indians' capital. Susquehanna, Long Reach River, Great Bay River, and Muddy Waters. Tamaqua, Little Beaver Stream. Tobyhanna, Stream of Alder Trees. Towanda, where we bury the dead, sacred Nanacoke burial ground. I had found that the Native Americans did bury their dead along the Lackawanna River, but sites were not known of where that was. Wallenpaupack, Deep Still Water. Wyalusing, place of the old man, ancient warriors said to live nearby. Wyoming, Great Flat Lands. Now, last summer, I have a picture of a postcard. This is a mural that was painted in downtown Scranton by a Native American, and it is to depict the Native Americans of our area, the Lenape, their culture, their way of life. A great turtle rose from the ocean, including Turtle Island, known as North America. When the turtle emerged from the water, the earth and the land grew from its back, creating the roots of the Lenape people, represented as flowers. At the center, a woman and a man are dancing in full regalia in ceremony. Women are highly respected and valued within the Lenape culture, as it is matrilineal, meaning children of Lenape women follow their mother's clan. The image at the base of the mural along represents the important waterways, the Delaware, the Susquehanna, and the Lackawanna rivers. And Ben Scott Miller was the artist that did this along with Miguel Beelan. And that is my program.
Much, Michelle. We covered a lot of ground,
A
lot of ground
lot.
there. More than just Lackawanna County. That was some great information. A quick commercial before I go for ask for questions, because you mentioned Sullivan's March. If anyone is interested in learning more about Sullivan's March, the Historical Society will be actually working with the Reading and Northern Railroad. We're having a train excursion on Saturday, August 15th. With 20 Revolutionary War reenactors on the train. I'll be going from Pittston to Tunkhannock, following kind of part of the route of Sullivan's March. So we'll be learning a little bit more about Sullivan's March and the Revolutionary War activities in in the region on that tour. I will find the link and I'll put it in the chat so you have it. Now I will open the program in general to questions. If anyone has questions or comments. I was muting people as we go, so just please unmute yourself if you have a question to ask.
This is Joe Musel
Hi,
with
Joe.
the Elmhurst Township Planning Commission. We've been we're celebrating what we say is our 200th anniversary. And I've been trying to write a history of our township. We were formerly known as Dunnings. And I found something that said after the Battle of 44, some of the survivors came up Roaring Brook through Dunning, and they ended up at something called Blood Pond. But I've not been able to find the location of Blood Pond. Apparently, the Indians found them encamped there, and they massacred them and threw the bodies into the pond. So if anybody comes across a map that shows where this Blood Pond off of Roaring Brook was, that would be appreciated.
Okay.
I also did find a very old map that showed Capoose, and it did indicate that there was an Indian burial ground there. But I don't know whatever happened to that Indian burial ground.
Yeah, through the research I found, it said there were many Indian burial grounds, but we do not know where they are.
They're kind of there are historical references to them, but they're very vague. It tends to be something like by the third apple tree on the right. So there's records of one near Providence. Sweeney's Beach comes up a lot along Lackawanna River as settlement communities. So somewhere in that general area. But I said I'm not sure there are specific locations.
Thank you.
A couple things. I'm related to the Hatzels that were in the group of men that went out the night before the massacre, or the day before, and were killed along the Susquehanna. They were trying to bring in corn, and they were, I think, going back to Pittston area. That's I know there were houses that were not exactly forts, but they were fortified houses that people were in. And we had a report, there was an obituary on my grandfather many times, that was 12 years old at that time. How he and his mom and the littler kids that survived were in the fort, and he had to carry paint for the Indians. I don't know what that meant, but that was something he said. But I always wondered, how did they get back? They were, of course, folks from Connecticut that had settled, and they considered that a part of Connecticut at the time. And I did find something that showed that they traveled down south. I assumed they went, across, but I'm trying to think, okay, the revolution is happening. How did they make it eventually back to Connecticut? But they, I think they initially went down toward Easton, went southeast. And there's records that this boy, this 12-year-old, helped guide the troops back north, that went up in the fall. I mean, it was months before people made it back to the valley to even bury the dead,
Right.
There is a monument along the road that's on the west side of the Susquehanna, north of Pittston, that the DAR, one chapter of the DAR put up for the folks that died in that group that were trying to bring in crops back to the fort. Anyway.
I can imagine the paint for the Indians would
Yeah.
possibly have been paint to paint the totems, paint for their war paint for their face.
Did they really have totems in the Wyoming Valley? I think of that as being out west.
Yeah, I don't know.
at the time.
I had not found exactly if they had it, but I would assume that some, if they had painted on the bark of the longhouses also, maybe? I don't know.
This is while they were in the fort, before
Yeah.
the survivors were told get out and leave.
Mhm. Yeah.
And maybe one night, before they started walking out. And they came back years later. Some of the family did come back and settled, and lived there.
I wanted to say it was a nice presentation, Michelle.
Well, thank you, Gail.
And the Frances Slocum that you spoke of, her brothers were, two of her brothers were Ebenezer and Benjamin from Slocum Hollow.
I know there's a Frances Slocum Park there by Wilkes-Barre, and there's a similar one in Indiana where she ended up, where her property is a state park. And
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah, when the Miami or the Native Americans in Indiana were kicked out of Indiana and forced west by around 1830 something, because she was white, she was able to save her property and her, several square miles or whatever, and take in her family and other Native Americans that she could, so they didn't get forced to move west out to Missouri or wherever the Indians were pushed to.
There was a federal private law just for her to keep that land.
Oh,
Really?
But
Any
it was
other-
interesting that she's well known in Indiana as well as Pennsylvania.
That's good to know. That's good to know. I did not know that. So any other questions or comments? Thank you again, Michelle, for joining us, for sharing the information. It said we certainly covered a lot of ground today, rather than just Lackawanna County. Thank you for joining us and sharing your information. I hope everyone has an excellent 4th of July for the upcoming holiday. There will not be a pastimes program in July. We'll move on. We'll rejoin again in the end of August with Glynis Johns from the Black Scranton Project, who'll be talking about some of her new research on the civil rights movement in Scranton. So that'll again be our August program, the next program that we're hosting here. Thank you again for joining us, everyone, and have a lovely weekend.